All right. Let's get down to it then. Welcome everybody. Hopefully we will be having more people joining during the course of the event. First of all, let me start by saying, I'm here today representing the Urban Innovative Actions, and then within the Secretariat, the team that has really worked very hard for this activity to be finalized throughout the last year, which was a very difficult year, mostly because of COVID. And I'm talking about my colleagues, Amelie, Ophélie, and Raffaele. What we did last year is we said that we took a moment and we realized that there is a lot of things going on in urban mobility. And we thought that it was the best high time for us to utilize and get to understand what our projects were doing in this field and how they were implementing this buzzword of innovation in urban mobility in their cities, and how they were trying to bring very practical and realistic solutions for their citizens. And we structured an activity which was centered around answering three main questions in regard to whether data is or will be the new fuel for the future in regard to urban mobility. What sort of collaboration and governance we need between different stakeholders, stakeholders with often competing interests, the private and the public stakeholders, and then what it takes to actually make citizens to change their behavior, change their mindset, and opt for more environmental friendly or sustainable modes of transport. Now, while we were doing this in 2020, we were hit by COVID pandemic. So this, of course, also changed the way that we worked in this activity in the first place, but most importantly, it also changed what the cities had to say. So in the end of the day, we culminated our efforts by the end of 2020 with a very interesting report, which is available on our website, publicly accessible. And yeah, my colleagues will also share this the link in the chat. And in order to do so, we worked with our 5 cities that were implementing projects in the field of urban mobility. And I'm super happy today because we have 3 of the people that we will work very closely with in the implementation of this project. And you will get to hear from them in a bit later. Also we have with us one of the experts that was key in working with us and making this happen. And I'm talking about Vanessa, to whom I will give now the floor to present today's event, and she will actually moderate and coordinate the whole discussion. Vanessa, thanks a lot for your work during the last year, and yeah, good luck with everything.
Thanks a lot, Iraklis. So good afternoon. I'm Vanessa Holf. I'm in fact a UI expert for the Commute project in Toulouse. I have the pleasure to be your moderator for this session. So here a short overview of the agenda, if we can have a look at it. Katarina, thank you. So we'll start with the first part on understanding mobility behavior. So looking at challenges and the innovative solutions from the city of Ghent, represented today by Sophie Gillerts. She managed the TMAS UI project, and we'll also look at the challenges and solutions from Anna Huttunen from the city of Lahti, who led the City Cap project. Then, so it's clear we'll take questions actually in between the 2 presentations, not at the end. We'll move on to part 2, which will focus on a very actual topic, so COVID-19 crisis and its impact on urban mobility. Here we'll have Kenneth joining us from the city of Albertslund, another UIA city, who will say a few words about the LINK projects and the impact the COVID crisis had on LINK. And we'll also have still Sophie and Anna with us, providing us with their experience on this theme. We'll take questions from you at the end, and then we'll wrap up. So if I may say, starting with the first part on understanding mobility behavior, we will hear from our colleagues how they manage to motivate and incentivize their citizens, both in Lahti and in Ghent, to change their mobility patterns on an everyday basis. Their projects, you will hear, develop transportation systems that try to facilitate a behavioral change. So we'll hear two presentations now of about 10-15 minutes each, and I'll give the floor to Sophie, who will present the TMAS project in Ghent. Sophie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sophie Gillaerts and I work for the mobility company of the city of Ghent. You can go to the next slide. I will give you first some short facts about Ghent, because I'm not sure if everybody here knows the city, but it's a medium-sized city in East Flanders in Belgium. And it has 260,000 inhabitants, and it grew a lot in population in the last decade. This means also more cars, more traffic, a higher need of parking places, etc. And Ghent has very ambitious goals regarding their modal split. We want to reach 50% of all the movements done in a sustainable way by 2024. And on the slide, you can see the modal split numbers of 2018. And there you can see we were already well underway to reach our goal, as 34% of the movements were already done by bicycle. You can go to the next slide. So Ghent has many challenges regarding mobility. There's parking, there's circulation, there are lots of cyclists. But today I will focus on one challenge, and that is how can we reach behavioral change in transport mode use in modal split? And how can we convince even more citizens? Because as you could see, our modal split is already quite good, but how can we just convince those people who are still very much focused on car use, for example. And this is what our UIA project, TMAS, or Traffic Management as a Service, tried to solve by focusing on getting all the relevant mobility information to the citizens on time and also 24/7. So the first step in our project was to aggregate the data. The second one was then to inform all the citizens, all the road users. And the third step was to give them advice in case of a disruption. And TMAS ran for 3 years, was funded by the Urban Innovative Actions Initiative. And we had 9 partners cooperating in our project, and we ended in January of this year, so 5 months ago. You can go to the next slide. I think it's one more. Yeah, thank you. So within TMAS, we developed an innovative online mobility dashboard, and this dashboard was called link.ghent. I will show you a screenshot a little bit later on in this presentation. So actually the idea was that we noticed there's a lot of mobility data already out there, but you really have to look in all different places, different websites, different sources, to have the complete overview of all the mobility options. And that's why we wanted to use all this data that is already out there. We wanted to aggregate it into one dashboard so that cities and citizens could find all the information, the multimodal information, in one place for their city 24/7. So this means that we actually just use data that was already out there instead of installing hardware and collect new data. And the data of these multiple sources was then aggregated, converted into the same data format, and then visualized on our dashboard. And on the slide, you can actually see the data sources that we used in Ghent. So there were local data sources that are owned by the city themselves. For example, the availability of our own parking lots. Then there was also global data, that's weather data, for example, national data. In Belgium, that's, for example, the train data. and also weather data, but then more on a local level. Then there was also private data where the city had or has agreements with the owners of this data. So for example, parking occupation in private parkings in the city. And then there was also the data of our project partners, TomTom and BeMobile. It was also a very modular system, and this means that if another city would be interested to also have this kind of dashboard, but they're not interested in all the different aspects, they can just choose the blocks that they are interested in and then adapt the dashboard to the situation in their city. You can go to the next slide. So what is now so special about our dashboard? Well, obviously, I mentioned it already a couple of times. It gives you an overview of the multimodal mobility information. It's not only focused on data about cars, for example, because there is a lot of data about cars, but there's also for cyclists, for pedestrians, for public transport users, a lot of data available. Users could also, if they didn't want to, they didn't have to, but if they wanted to, they could create their own personalized user account, and then they could answer some questions, and their mobility profile would come out, and then the dashboard would also show different data default depending on which mobility profile they had. You could also register to receive personal notifications about your daily commute, for example, pre-trip, but I will explain how this worked later on. And also very important about our project is that the development was really based on the results of the user research that we conducted in the first months of the project. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, this is a print screen of our dashboard, link.ghent. So you can see on the left that there are different tabs, and each tab was for one particular transport mode. And then you had all the information of data information about this transport mode available on the page. The page you see here is about parking. Then you can go to the next slide. This is a screenshot of our route planner. So here people, when you registered on our dashboard and you said, I want to receive notifications, then you were redirected to this web page, and there you could enter your route, for example, your daily commute route, and you would say, okay, from point A to B, I take the bike, then I take from B to C the train, and then from C to D, I walk from the train station, for example, to my office. So you could really enter those 3 steps into the system. You could also say, okay, I do this route on Monday and on Wednesday, about around 8 o'clock in the morning, and I would like to receive a notification if something has happened. And then 15 minutes before you would leave on your route, you would receive an SMS or an email, the way you prefer, saying something happened, here's an alternative to also get on your destination on time. This way you would also be able to get to know other transport modes you maybe not always use. Sometimes if nothing has happened, you would just receive notification that everything is fine, wishing you a nice trip. You can go to the next slide. Here you see examples of how these notifications looked like. So there's email, we had SMS, and we also had browser notifications on your computer, but also on your smartphone. Next slide, please. So you can imagine now that DMAS and link.ghent are very much about collecting the data and informing the cities and the citizens, and also advising them. So if something had happened, then you would really receive alternative ways to get to your destination, but you could still choose yourself if you choose this alternative, or if you just still do what you normally do. And then we believe that the next step in stimulating behavioral change is really to start activating people by nudging them, by some kind of gamification, but this was not part of our project. Also very important to mention is that the period where we started to experiment with sending notifications to our citizens, that it was in full COVID-19 crisis. So the mobility situation was already very different. There were not so many disruptions because there was less traffic, etc. So it was quite difficult. I mean, they worked, but usually you would stay at home, so you wouldn't even need an alternative to get to your destination in case of any disruption. Next slide, please. So to summarize, how did we try to change people's behavior for Thema's and Link.Ghent? The focus was really on creating one place where all the real-time mobility information for Ghent was available, so people could get to know new transport modes, could also experiment with these new modes, and they also had the opportunity, if they wanted, to receive information pre-trip, and then they could make a smarter choice before leaving from home. The key takeaway for us was that qualitative multimodal data is very important. So there's a lot of data out there, but not all the data is, the quality is good enough of everything. So you really have to check this first. And then also communicating with the citizens, how do they want to receive their notifications, knowing that is also very important. But actually our project was too short to really see if there's a modal shift change only related to our project, as there were also other mobility initiatives in the city. Also, COVID was there, so this also had a huge impact on the travel behavior in our city, but we will talk about that more later on in this session. So you can go now to the next slide, because this was my final one. So I just wanted to thank you all for listening to me. And if you have any questions, I think you can ask them now.
Thank you very much, Sophie. This is a great project. I very much like this personalized information system, which I'm sure was very successful. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to take questions already from the audience, if there are any. The floor is yours. Any questions? You also have the chance later to ask questions, but I don't see any question. I have a question actually to you, Sophie, and we can take questions later. As I said, if you had to put one main challenge you encountered to achieve behavioral change in Ghent, apart from COVID, but one main challenge to mention, what was it during the project?
I think, the most important challenge within our project then is that the convinced people, you already have them with you, but it's this small part of people who are still, for example, who believe that the bus is always late, so they just take their car. How can you convince them? And this is the most difficult part. And
what was your solution to this? Did you
just by trying to giving them the right information on the correct time to then try to convince them? Because for example, if you always use your car and there's a huge traffic jam and you know it before you leave from home, and an alternative is a bus, and then you take this bus and it brings you to your destination, you're still on time, it's actually quite nice. That's the moment where you can really convince people that maybe this bus is actually quite okay and it works. So that's one, that's the way we tried to solve this, by informing people them before they leave, so that they can make a smarter choice.
And can you think of key incentives that are needed to accelerate behavioral change in cities, even outside this UIA project? Any key incentive you think of?
Well, I know from some another project that went on a while in Ghent in a certain neighborhood, and there was really, it was like a competition about to have the most cycling kilometers, for example, or the most bus kilometers, and then you were tracked during your trips. And I think this is a way that maybe it's again the people that already are very convinced that you have, but maybe also some other people like this idea of a competition and take this time of this competition to try other modes, and then realize, oh, this is actually quite nice to cycle around. It's safe, it's quick. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, this is definitely a good, a valid point. So thank you very much. Are there any questions in the meantime from the audience? No? Then I suggest we move on to Anna in Lahti in Finland to tell us about the CityCap project, also another exciting UIA project. Anna?
Thanks, Vanessa, and thanks, Sophie. That was very interesting again to hear about the last results of your project. So hi everyone, my name is Anna Huttunen and I work for the city of Lahti in Finland. Maybe a few words about Lahti before we go into the actual presentation of the CityCap project. So Lahti is a medium-sized city, 120,000 inhabitants. It's located 100 kilometers from Helsinki, and it takes 50 minutes per train. Lahti is pretty compact, so everything is near in the city, and 75% of the population, they live within 5 kilometers of the urban core. And of course, that really makes Lahti a very potential cycling and walking city. However, our main challenge, regarding the changing the behavior of our citizens, is that Lahti is still pretty car dependent. So people love their cars, and there is still a lot of work to do regarding promoting sustainable mobility and the behavior change. And that's something that we really tackled in the CityCap project. And that's I guess, transportation is the biggest challenge, but also the most important challenge to take, because Lahti wants to be a carbon neutral city by 2025. And that's what we are aiming at, and apparently we are also going to reach that. But yeah, please, Ophelia, you can go to the next one. So what did we do in the CityCap project to promote sustainable urban mobility and trying to change the behavior of our citizens? We developed the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, the first one for our city, also one of the first ones in Finland, which is we're kind of showing the example to other cities back here. We also did a personal carbon trading pilot, which I guess was the most innovative part of our project, and also maybe the most challenging and interesting part of our project, both national and international level. And then we also built a smart bicycle highway. Yeah, okay, you can go to the next one. So the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, actually, what is more in this is that we developed it together with our master plan. So we have created a process that's called Lahti Direction, where we have integrated these two plans together, and we are developing them further in 4-year cyclical rounds. So we work together with the city council and together with the strategy process of the city, in order to really make it a plan and strategic paper that really has to be implemented and also really gets accepted by everyone and also the decision makers. Our CUMB has 30 measures. There are measures that have to do with infrastructure and maintenance. We have developed the city cycling network for 2030, and we have already started implementing it. We are going to improve the winter maintenance, the guidance of the cycling routes, etc. We have several measures for mobility management. One of those is also the personal carbon trading pilot that we did. And of course, there is different kind of communication methods to promote the behavior change. There are measures to promote cycling and walking in schools, and also, for instance, among the city personnel. Then there are the mobility services. We are going to have our city bike system this autumn, which is of course very great for our city. We are developing the park and ride facilities. We are all the time trying to improve the public transport network. We are also increasing the amount of electric buses. We're going to have like almost 20% of our buses going electric in July this year, which is next month actually. And then we also implemented the city center circulation plan, which of course has a very, very big importance in that regard, that we really need to tackle the last mile distances and try to change the like the trips taken by foot or bicycle in the city center. And yeah, I hope that the plan got accepted last year, and I hope that we are going to get it implemented as well in the next years. Okay, you can go to the next one. And so what we did also in the project, we built smart bicycle highway. The City Gap Smart Bicycle Highway is it's one of the connections in the city cycling network for 2030. So it's one of the main cycling routes, and it has been implemented using like the newest and good planning instructions. So, but this, I think this is also a very good example of the transformation of our city, because like we have also received a lot of negative feedback regarding the smart bicycle highway, especially regarding the word smart that we are using here. So it's very interesting to see that like in a city that is still very car dependent, and the people have like very strong opinions if they are opposing, for instance, cycling or improving the cycling facilities, and they are kind of scared that someone will take away something that they already have, for instance, like very wide car lanes. And like the discussion that has evolved around the project part has been very interesting, and it's still going on. Even though the bicycle highway is ready, it's being used, the infrastructure is great, and people know how to ride on that. I suppose they like it because it's like it's safe, it's fast, because like walking and cycling is separated. But still there is all the time discussion around it, like, hey, what is the smartness in this? Why did you do this? And what's wrong with the planners of the city, etc. So I think it's very, very interesting. And I think it's also very, very typical in cities like Lahti that are like in the middle of the transformation process. Okay, you can go to the next one, please. And then we get into the personal carbon trading pilot that we did in the project. So what we did is that we developed a model and an application for personal carbon trading. This means that we developed an application that promotes and also like attracts people to change their mobility behavior into more sustainable. The idea of our application was that the people download the application, then in the beginning they will answer a set of questions, and based on that, their personal carbon budget, weekly carbon budget, will be defined. And then they just have their mobile phone with them, and it calculates the CO2 footprint of their mobility automatically, because it was able to detect if the person is taking their car or going by foot, or if they are cycling or taking the train, for instance. And then after, like at the end of the week, then you would see if you surpassed your budget or if you went below. And then of course, if you're behaving better, then you would receive carbon credits that you could use on the marketplace to receive like rewards for being more sustainable. We started the development of the model and application right in the beginning of the project, in the beginning of 2018. And we launched or we opened the beta version of the app for testing in September 2019. And then the actual pilot, we had to postpone the starting of the pilot because of the COVID pandemic. So we were able to start it in June 2020, and it lasted for 6 months. And during that period, especially, we were then able to analyze the mobility behavior and the changes in that of the people. And yeah, the pilot has been the first citywide pilot in the world. And it's an example of very innovative tool, and it has been very interesting how much attention it required. So I think it also really shows that there is a need for different kind of tools for the cities for like collect data, but also to encourage the people. Yeah, you can go to the next one. Thanks. And what we got as results of our PCT, we had almost 3,000 IDs were created in our for the app users, and at best times we had like 350 active users. The data was representative, which is good. So we had people joining from different kind of age groups and different kind of social economic situations, etc. So that has been very good for the research part of the project. We also asked the citizens to choose what would be the fair allocation method. So they were able to choose if it was like the fair share, so that everyone would get a certain amount of allowances per week, if it would depend on the life situation, or if they would all have like certain kind of level that they need to shrink it on, like percentage. And they decided that the fair level would be the citizen specific, and that was also found fair at the end of the pilot. And what we found out is that the main drivers to use the application was the information on their mobility emissions, challenging themselves, and only the third one was the rewards. So I think these two things that were like on top of the list, these are the two takeaways that should be shared everywhere. Like, because we already know that gamification is a very good method, like, and also making things visible so that the people really see like, okay, this is my impact, this is how I'm causing emissions when I'm taking the car, for instance. And that's like the beginning. Also, like what Sophie showed in her presentation, that you can see there is like the information, and then there is, in the end, is the activity. So you need to like go step by step higher on the ladders. And of course, challenging oneself is always a good thing to do. We found out that 36% of the users changed their mobility into more sustainable, which is of course already good. But of course, we also know that there is always the 10-20% that will never change no matter what you do. Those are the people that will never get out of their car. And that's something that you need to accept as well, I guess. And regarding the COVID situation, it made it difficult to analyze if the changes in the behavior were actually because of the pandemic or the pilot. Oh yeah, if you go to the next one, I can show from the picture. Yeah, so of course, like there was really a big decrease in the mobility as such during the first lockdown. That was in spring 2020. So in Lahti, for instance, the overall amount of mobility was decreased to 50%. But instead, of course, the trips taken by car increased. And then during the main research data collection period, it was also decreasing, but we really don't know if it was because of the COVID or because of using the application, but maybe a bit of both as such. But all in all, I think I'm very happy that we were able to still, even though there was the COVID pandemic and there was the lockdown and there was everything, we were still able to implement also the pilot period of the personal carbon trading. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you very much. Questions, please.
Thanks a lot, Anna. I think it's great to hear that the UIA project led to an SUMP in a European city. So this is fantastic. And I hope that your personal carbon trading scheme will inspire many other cities. Do you have any ideas whether in Finland or elsewhere in Europe, the idea will be picked up by other cities, or is it a bit too soon?
Yeah, actually, I know that in Lille in France, there is like a pilot going on in a university where they would like to implement personal carbon trading for the staff and the students of the university.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Finland, we have now created this kind of network of Finnish cities. There is the ITS Finland is leading the network, and we have been like developing together the ideas for other cities where they could also implement the personal carbon trading. And I know that, for instance, city of Helsinki is willing to implement their own model, and they are working on that. And in Tampere, they're also they are developing a carbon calculator. It has a little bit similar idea that our personal carbon trading pilot has, and there is also rewarding of citizens, and they're like attaching it to an application that they already have in their city that's like for everyone that moves into the city. So it's pretty nice to see that the idea has been like spreading, and other cities are also really implementing it.
Yeah, this is really a truly innovative idea. So I hope it disseminates further. Thank you very much for this. So here's the same question as to Sophie about, let's say, what was the main challenge you faced during the project to change the mobility behavior of Lahti citizens? Let it be with the bicycle highway scheme or the PCT. Could you quote one main challenge, please?
I think, well, of course, the behavior itself. I think like during a 3-year project, you might be able to like inform the people and maybe like share knowledge, maybe make them aware, maybe encourage them to try something new. But I think you really need a little bit longer period of time to really see the change in the pattern. But yeah, I think the challenge is that it's still, well, of course, it's still too easy here to take your car. So I think like if I also answer to maybe the next question, like what is the most important tool for the city to change the behavior, is that we really need to make it more favorable, easy and convenient to go buy food or cycle.
Yeah.
So that the city really needs to have the courage to make restrictions, regulate the use of the car, etc. Otherwise, I mean, there is always the part of population that says that we should only make it like voluntary. Whatever you do, it can only be voluntary, so that everyone has to have the right to choose. But I really think that the city needs to be able to, for instance, like lower down the speed limit in the city center, make the circulation plan, reroute the traffic into a certain route so that you can develop like walkable city center, etc. So yeah, well, regulation I guess is an important thing. Yeah.
Can I ask you one last tricky question that I didn't tell you in advance, actually? what would you have done differently if you could rewind? Would you do anything differently, or you think you did what you could?
Yeah, well, I think several things we could have done differently. For instance, when you are developing an application like that, there is always like lot of interests that have, like, everyone wants to have their part in an application or a scheme like that. And I think maybe it would have helped if, I don't know, but it's, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's not possible to do that within the project video, but if there was like more time for the project, like 5 years, I guess you could easily, for instance, for personal carbon trading pilot, you could use like 5 years. Then I would have taken more time for the development phase of the application to make it still like easier, and also maybe to work a little bit longer with the citizens together to create the understanding of the whole concept.
Good point. Yeah. Now it's time to take questions from the audience. I see we have several participants here. Are there any questions also in the chat? Maybe it's your chance. Any questions? No, it's very clear. Okay. So if there are no more questions, I think we're good with time. It's time to move to the part 2. So thank you very much, Sophie. Thank you very much, Anna, for these very inspiring presentations. And I like the fact we have a very female panel there. It's perfect. So, but for the next session, we'll invite Kenneth to join. But first, a little introduction to part 2. Which will look at the impact of COVID on urban mobility and which solutions UIA cities found to tackle this impact. So clearly the crisis has been changing our mobility patterns in a very short space of time. I think this is the biggest challenge. COVID-19 has had a significant impact on people's lives everywhere, with the change maybe being more notable in the transport sector. I think we all agree with that here. So for instance, here are some figures. In Europe, the OECD reported that the daily carbon emissions have declined by 58% during the lockdowns, with emissions from cars and motorcycles down by 88%. Also, according to the International Energy Agency, globally, the CO2 emissions are expected to fall by 8% in 2020. So this is still to be confirmed. But experience from previous recessions do show that when things revert to normal, I'm sure you saw that in your respective cities, then all the benefits also go back to normal. So emissions will increase rapidly when people go back to resume to their previous mobility habits. One of the most notable impacts for UIA cities that are mentioned in the report Iraklis introduced beforehand, one of the major impacts has been the reduction in the amount of people using certain types of passenger transport, which has been driven by a combination of both the government lockdowns and people not using specific modes because they've been told not to, but also because they were scared. They didn't feel that was safe for them. For instance, the first available data has shown in Lahti, I quote a report from you, that public transport use has fallen by 80 to 70%, so a big fall in Lahti during the pandemic. Public transport has continued to operate in Lahti during the outbreak, but there's been a number of mitigation measures provided by Lahti to minimize the risks for passengers, but still COVID has presented new and unforeseen challenges for your city to contend with, for all cities. In Albertslund, the requirement of wearing face masks, even for the testing of the autonomous driverless bus shuttles, has put off people from testing these innovative solutions and put the project on hold. We will hear more from Kenneth on this. So it has affected all the projects very much. unsurprisingly, also the ridership levels of walking, cycling, and micromobility have seen a rapid rise in the modal share of all your cities. But especially I read in Albertslund and Ghent, but also car use and travel kilometers have also increased in most UAE cities. Here in Lahti again, Lahti, you saw your car trips increase from 55 to 70% in relation to mode share during the COVID period. And the question is really whether these travel patterns dominated by car travel will continue, will remain, and be sustainable in the long term. This is a big question mark, isn't it? So it's important for cities, UAE cities, and all cities to understand what will be, how to plan for the future, and whether these changes will result in permanent habitual changes. So research, putting together a bit, research has shown that these kind of disruptions can be a catalyst towards this shift, but avoiding it requires governments to take decisive actions. And I mentioned regulation and also support from the government. So sooner rather than later, this is governments need to take action. For example, financially, to support alternative transport modes. We heard it before. These transport modes that have been so badly affected, including public transport. So with this in mind, I would like to ask our three speakers, Anna, Sophie, and Kenneth, about their own experiences, more specifically linked to COVID. And I suggest we start with Kenneth, who has joined the second part. So Kenneth, could you please present briefly the project, Link project in Albertslund, and then also mention how COVID has impacted your project, and how, for instance, you've been able to monitor the typical user behavior, especially during those COVID times. So Kenneth, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. I will take the floor. And thank you for some very interesting presentations from both Anna and Sophie. In relation to that, we in the Link project also work within the mobility area. And as you said, Vanessa, earlier, the Link project has to do with testing autonomous shared vehicles, and this is specifically for providing a better public transport in the future, and also to be able to have a more sustainable approach to how we plan our cities in the future. In the Link project, we work in an area where a new future light rail will be built and will be finished in 2025. And this new light rail system is a huge infrastructural project. It actually it connects more than 10 municipalities in the suburban area of the city of Copenhagen. And it stretches around 29 kilometers. So our vision in the Link project is to provide a first last mile autonomous shared service to the new light rail system. And we do this in city transformational areas along the light rail. And we have recently deployed our autonomous service in one of these transformational city areas. It is at a campus area at Danish Technical University sites. So it's an internal campus service, primarily intended for the use from students and employees at the campus area. And the service was implemented on April the 19th. And I guess in relation to the other projects presented already, they have finished, but the LINK project is still ongoing. And we have, we got a 6-month prolongation approved by Urban Innovative Actions. And we have another request for a 3-month prolongation to extend the service at the DTU campus site. And as you also referred to, Vanessa, the project has been hugely impacted by COVID-19 crisis. And of course, this has something to do with what we work with public transport, and we work with providing better public transport in the future. And the project is hugely dependent on getting user data from people actually utilizing this new autonomous service at the D2 campus. And the way we have been impacted is that the campus area has been closed for almost a year. It started March last year, same as other places in Europe and the world. And that means that all employees and students have been sent home for quite a while. So we don't see any, the mobility behavior and the mobility patterns has changed enormously, as there are very, very few people at the campus site. So we need data to make some conclusive results on how users perceive these new services, but also to test a smartphone application, a sensing platform that has been developed as part of the LINK project. It is kind of similar to what Sophie and Anna presented. We basically collect data from people utilizing the service via this application. And it is connected to around 300 beacons that has been set up at the campus area. So we get very detailed information about movement patterns. And on behalf of that, we are able to optimize transport and have a more demand responsive service in the future. And this is something that is related to providing better buses and better services as part of public transport in the future. So this is basically why the LINK project is still ongoing, and we are hoping that when the new semester begins after summer vacation, that will be late of August, the campus will be 100% reopened again. So that time we will have users at the campus site again. And we will be able to do our main data collection that time. So of course it depends on, we can get these last 3 months of prolongation, meaning that the project will end by November. And so we are hugely dependent on this further prolongation in the LINK project. We have also been challenged by a very complex legal framework for giving us the permission to do the autonomous vehicle testing at the campus area. And this is also some kind of related to the COVID-19, because what we have experienced is that the authorities also have been prioritizing other matters than our case, unfortunately. So So we think that that has also given us some time constraints in the end.
Could you elaborate a bit on this last point? Because I know it's all about regulation, isn't it? I found that very interesting, and I'm sure many other cities will be confronted with this kind of issues linked to the testing, the pilots on autonomous vehicles. Could you tell us a bit what it entailed and how are you going to change? Wasn't it change the legislation, or wasn't there some innovative
it is, as you
aspects?
say, it's usually it's a plan breaker when the regulatory system is not has not been updated, so it kind of reflects reality. The way Denmark has built its legal framework for testing autonomous vehicles is very bureaucratic and very complex from Link's point of view, and this is related that there are many authorities involved in approving vehicle tests. And we see it in relation to other Danish projects that are testing autonomous vehicles. They have also been delayed as our projects. And when we compare with other countries' legal frameworks, the Danish framework is huge, and there are many approval steps compared to, for example, Sweden's legal framework, and this is something that we have been discussing directly with the Minister of Transport. We have in the project we have seen this as a very important measure that needs to be changed in relation to get more AV tests on Danish roads in the future. So we have been in the press with this on several occasions, and this is also one of the reasons why we got directly in contact with the Minister of Transport. The Minister of Transport has visited the project when we started operation in April. And he has also replied that when they evaluate the legal framework in 2022, they will look at some of the ideas we have suggested for improvements of the legal framework.
Yeah. Okay. This is very interesting how it can lead to some legal changes at even national level, no? So
yeah, and the way the projects have been organized is also very dependent. Has been very dependent on this. Is very dependent on this AV testing and the approval of it, because every deliverable in the project is dependent on the vehicle testing. So we have actually been waiting and quite a while for the minister to approve the tests at the end. And this is also part of how the legal framework is complex in relation to how they do it in Sweden, where it's an administrative process. In Denmark, it becomes political because the minister needs to approve it in the end. So, for example, when you have a COVID-19 crisis and it becomes political, of course, political agendas affect this. And that is also why the authorities has been mostly concerned with the COVID-19 crisis, not so much with approval of our projects.
So then I would like to ask Anna, actually, what has been your specific experience? We heard a little bit before, but your experience with the pandemic, and if you had any main point any recommendation for the future in relation to the pandemic from Lahti's point of view?
Yeah, it has been very interesting times indeed. Like, as you already mentioned, I also like pinpointed a bit in my presentation, is that here, like everywhere else, like the mobility, like the overall amount of trips was decreased with like almost 50%, and that's a lot. And we were like gathering and analyzing the data from the traffic lights, for instance, and it seemed that like during the lockdown in 2020, the car traffic was also decreased with 30%.
Mm-hmm.
In the most busiest adjunct, the public transport, with 80%. And that's something that we are still like we are tackling on that. We have been lucky that we also receive like recovery money from the state for the public transport, which is of course good for the city. But of course that itself won't bring the people back into the bus. So that will be a challenge now and also in the next years, I guess. Cycling and walking, well, of course, because people were just not traveling around, they were also, but at the moment during the summer, again, it seems like regarding to our counters that we have very good amounts of cycling and also walking in the city center. What is very interesting, I guess it's everywhere else, but especially here in Finland, the people have really found their way back to the nature. So all these kind of like recreational areas, recreational paths, they are being used a lot. I think this was a very good timing for us as well. We did this kind of like marked trails. Of course, we have like a lot of this kind of jogging rounds in the forest, but we did like also market trails in the forests of around Lahti, and they have been extremely popular, and that has been a very good thing during the COVID pandemic when everything else was basically forbidden. So like I guess like in situation and in times like this, like when you have these places that people can still go, of course that's easy here in Finland because we have space and we have forests. I think it's a little bit different kind of situation in a million city where you really need to also travel far away to get into the forest. But yeah, I mean, like offering and improving these kind of facilities is very important. We also we did some changes regarding cycling in the city center. So we, because in Finland, it's very common to have this kind of combined walking and cycling streets, so that you have the car lane and then you put walking and cycling together. But of course, like we have now the new law that also emphasizes that we should like little by little try to separate walking and cycling. And of course, what we also did like during the pandemic in the city center, we moved more and more cycling to the car lane, or like to the side of the car lane. And I think these are kind of things that you can very fast implement during a pandemic like this, and of course has been also done in many other cities. But yeah, I don't know, with the public transport situation, I think time will only show. We will try to market it now. I think we are going to do next autumn, we are going to do again like 2 weeks period where we offer like free public transport for new users for 2 weeks so that they can try it, and maybe then also we'll gather information if they will start using the public transport. And then of course you just need to try to communicate that this is a safe and sanitary way to travel around in the future as well. But yeah, of course, since home office is becoming more and more common, and I guess after the pandemic, it will like remain partially being the new normal. It's very hard to say if we are going to be able to reach even the level that we had before on the use of public transport.
Okay, maybe we can move to the next question because she's not coming back. So maybe I can ask Sophie a question if you're there. Sophie as well. Sophie, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. So maybe you can tell us more about the changes that you foresee as, yes, sorry, I can see. Yes, do you see me? Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
I can see you.
So maybe you can tell us more about what do you foresee as changes in your way of working and triggering behavioral change regarding the pandemic, after the pandemic.
I think it's like Anna said, it's very difficult right now to know or to estimate what a real impact on mobility behavior will be from the pandemic, because we indeed also saw the same things. There was a lot less public transport use, also a lot less cars, but still people shifting from public transport to car use because they just felt safer in their own car. We also saw a decrease in shared mobility options, especially during the lockdown. So maybe that was only linked to the fact that people were not driving around and less to them having fear to use shared mobility. And we saw a very high increase in recreational cycling and walking, because that was the only thing you could do. So it's very similar. Now, what the impact will be in a year, it's difficult because also Anna mentioned this already. We also feel that the home working, the home working will be a keeper, so that less people will have to travel every day to their work, which will also have its impact. It's not necessarily a bad one, because if there's less people on the road, it means there's less traffic, there's less emissions, etc. But maybe we don't know what the people will do with the time that they gain by not traveling to work. So maybe they will use their car for something else. So it's very difficult to predict what will happen.
Okay, I think welcome back. We can welcome back Vanessa. She's back. Can you hear us? Yes. Thank you very much, Sophie, for your answer.
Yeah, sorry, I have bad connection, bad internet, so I've joined with my mobile phone. So asking our speakers now about the changes they foresee in their way of working to achieve this behavioral change. So in this new situation, now that your projects are finished, what is your plan to achieve behavioral change?
Actually, I just asked this question to
the
Sophie.
Same question.
So, yeah, to
Okay.
Sophie, yes. Maybe we can go to Kenneth, maybe.
Kenneth.
More.
Yes, thanks. As already said, I think it is difficult to foresee how it will impact mobility or what the impact will be on mobility in a year or two. But I think that for the city of Albertslund, we have seen an even higher dependency on cars, and that is because people feel unsafe when they use public transport. So basically, a lot of people have bought a small car, and they use it for commuting. And when you buy a car, you'll probably not sell it in a year or two. You'll probably stick to that 5 years or so. And what will happen afterwards? Well, will they shift again to public transport measures, or will they buy a new car? I think we lost some public transport users on behalf of COVID-19. and it will be very difficult to go back to public transport once you have tried a private car, and so there's a high need for recovery and development into for public transport in the future, and this is from a link perspective where we work with the public transportation and how can we in the future provide a more attractive, reliable and reachable service, a cheaper service. I think that collective autonomous services has some of the answer. I think you need to put more effort in not only technology development, because it will somehow come by itself, but you need to see how it can be adopted in for example, city planning, and how we can start to provide new ideas for city planners and developers on how we could build more sustainable cities with less cars and where more users rely on shared mobility service in the future. So for this, I think we need to improve. We need to invest, and so we can have a public transport service in the future that is a better service.
Sorry, apologies for all these technical problems. So I would be interested to know how our three cities here, Lahti, Ghent, Albertslund, how they feel that their city administration is equipped to react to the crisis and promote behavioral change. Do you think that the city will invest in these alternative modes of transport? Do you find that the governance coordination is fit enough? The planning departments are ready? How, during your project, but also now, how do you feel about your city administration support? So can I start maybe with Anna and Lahti to hear how Lahti is coping with it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course, like after a crisis like this, the financial situation of the city, well, it becomes like tough. And I guess, like, of course, this year's like the frame has been already decided, and we are developing the infrastructure how we wanted to develop it, but of course it easily also becomes political, like, and then you start discussing the euros and where you should put, like, when you are kind of like you need to get to the recovery process of the economy of the city, and then you start discussion like if we should like invest on very good bicycle infrastructure or not, if we should leave it as it is and we should put the money in somewhere else. So I think this is the discussion that will be going on the next years. We are already now, actually we are now seeing it very clearly at the moment, because we are having the like the communal elections this Sunday. So we are really in the middle of, so we are like everything that we are kind of suggesting, it's not going true as such. So let's basically, I would say that let's get back to the business like after the after the elections. But yeah, it's a challenging situation, and of course like the city administration, of course, like our, like the department, we are trying to work together and we are trying to prioritize, and we are like we have the goals that we want to achieve and we are working on that. But then of course, like on the city level, when it goes to the different interests, there will be like hard and long discussion on the frames for the next year, I guess. But then on the other hand, what is very good is that like in Finland, now there is this national new kind of roadmap for fossil-free transportation. And they are allocating now nationally like more and more state aid for infrastructure to promote walking and cycling. So they're like there is millions and millions of money that is now given to cities to different kind of projects to improve and facilitate the behavior change. And that's I think that is very effective tool to make the change visible in the cities.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. So this was a really timely question for you with the elections. Fingers crossed that you get some help.
Let's see.
Yes, how is it in Ghent? How do you find that the city administration of Ghent, which is very much very much in favor, I think, of sustainable modes, isn't it, Ghent? How do you feel supported?
Yeah, we are not in any election period, so they are in full administration now. So they really want to reach their goals that they set when they were elected, and that was before COVID. So that's a good thing for us. And what we saw during the crisis is that they actually reacted very, very quickly. They saw that there was a lot of recreational cycling and walking, so they started implementing new cycling streets in the city. I think in May. So in March we went in lockdown, and in May there were all new cycling streets. There was also new walking zones in the city. And these are all permanent. In the meantime, they decided we just keep them there. This new infrastructure, we will not undo that again. So that's a very good thing, because it makes it's a lot nicer for all the cyclists in the city. And then it might still help convincing people to use their bicycle for certain routes. So that's actually really good. There was also very quickly and successful development of a crowdedness barometer. So it will be used now during summer in events, so that people can check beforehand if it's very crowded or not. And we think this will also be keeper. This will be something that will be kept, because it's always interesting to know if you go somewhere how crowded it is, and then you can still decide if you want to go or not. So for us, it's quite okay. I must say that also now things are well, we're not back to normal in Belgium, obviously, but we see we can do more. We can move around more. We can come to work also. This just started, and we see that on public transport, it's picking up again. The people using it. Also, traffic on the roads is picking up, which means that more people are commuting by car. So, yeah, if the traffic jams increase, maybe this will also help to convince them to maybe try the train again and see if it's okay, if they feel safe. So, yeah, I think the city administration really reacted very good and very quickly. And they also just decided to keep some things permanent, even though they were implemented in relation to the crisis. So that's a very good thing.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. Kenneth, how is it in Denmark, in Albertslund? Do you feel you have the city administration behind you to change the curve?
Well, I guess that in Denmark, and I don't know if it's similar in other countries, but the local city administrations have been granted some national funds from a recovery and a resilience plan, and one national initiative that could get some users back in public transport has to do with during the summer vacation, people will be able to buy a very, very cheap ticket that offers, yeah, I would say almost free public transport all over the country. So that could get some users back in public transport. And for instance, I will, with my family, I will go with a ticket like that. So we'll go by public means in summer vacation and visit some of the beautiful smaller islands, because the ferries to there is also almost, it's very cheap with this ticket. So so this is one thing on a national level, and on a local administrative level. Biking and is highly prioritized in the city of Albertslund, and also I know that Albertslund is looking for how we could reduce parking spaces in the city, but of course, in relation to what I said earlier with a higher car dependency, I don't think it will be popular to suggest less parking spaces at the moment. Maybe at some later point, but I think that the national recovery and resilience plan could provide some other opportunities for the city as well. So there are some opportunities for getting future grants for local projects in relation to shared mobility as well.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. So I think, if the, are there any questions from the audience? I don't see any hands rising.
No, there is no question in the chat.
Okay, so then I think it's time to conclude. I think we can say that thanks to the UIA framework, cities like Lahti, like Ghent and Albertslund have been able to test mobility solutions to influence behavioral change, and their work provides key lessons that we hope many of you can learn further thanks to the report that has been published. So we really encourage you to read this report produced by the UIA Secretariat. And the next challenge for the cities, not only the UIA cities, but all European cities, will be to ensure that people don't lose faith in all forms of sustainable transport in the long run. And this will be critical for all UIA projects to achieve their long-term mobility strategies, which favor sustainable modes like walking, cycling, and especially public transport. So how to encourage people back to sustainable transport options, and especially public transport, and regain people that might have invested in a car during the crisis. So it's vital that cities are not afraid to continue to explore innovative solutions for behavioral change, and having the right enabling frameworks in cities will be of utmost importance. With this, I would like to conclude and to thank warmly our three speakers, Anna, Sophie, and Kenneth, for their insightful inspirations. I'd like also to thank Ophélie for stepping up during my technical problems, and thank her whole team. And thank you all again, and have a lovely afternoon.